All right, welcome back to another conversation between women. I'm Cameron and I'm here with my dear friend Corrine, and we're here to share with you our spiritual journey, and hopefully you'll glean some wisdom from it, or at least some lessons of what not to do.
Oh,
All right, what's the lowdown, girl?
I I don't
Well, I'll tell you what my lowdown is. I'm
start.
fat as shit right now, I feel like. I feel like I have so much poop in my belly. But I'm pretty sure it's a baby. And I can't, like last night, I woke up in the middle of the night with freaking anxiety because I couldn't get a breath because my belly's too big already. And so I had to like do all this moving around and wasn't working. So I went downstairs and I took motherwort tincture, and then I ate some food thinking maybe it was some weird thing, like I needed to be grounded. And then eventually after like 2 hours, I fell asleep. But man, I didn't have any of that stuff with Walela. My belly was so small the whole time. And now I'm like, all right, I get what moms are talking about when they're so fat they can't breathe. I can't like eat a lot at one time.
Yeah.
So I have to like nibble all the time, because if I eat too much, then yeah, I just can't set up. I have to like lay, I'm like a beached whale. I have to like lay down. It's weird.
Wow.
It's
Are
like an
your
alien.
is your appetite okay though? Like you're
Yeah, I have energy. My appetite is great. Like I've been eating meat again. And yeah, I went and
right in the middle,
socialized
right?
the other day, and
Hey, what?
I went and socialized the other
Oh,
day. I'm like, things are, I feel good otherwise. It's just physical discomfort at this point. So, which I
hmm.
didn't, I mean, I was so sick with Walela. I've said this before, I didn't really eat hardly anything until like 7 months. And so I didn't get that big. I slept on my stomach almost the entire time, like with one leg kind of out, but basically on my stomach fully the whole time. And yeah, that's not happening. That's not happening right now. So just
Oh,
try to enjoy it. But like, yeah, I have to go to water a lot. Like I just take cold baths all the time so that I just float.
oh,
It's
huh.
good, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a new experience for me. And this
You're
baby's
like
super movie.
halfway through
Yeah,
ish.
I'm at the beginning of my 5th month.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
ridiculous. I'm like, is this what's gonna be like? I'm just gonna be like miserable the whole time. But yeah, this baby moves all the time, always kicking, always moving. It's just, and that's another thing. Well, Layla didn't. She would kick in the mornings, and that was it. She didn't move. I still can't hear the heartbeat with the fetoscope. I've heard it with the Doppler when the midwife came one time, but um, yeah. So I can hear my placenta. So I think the placenta's up front. So then like the baby pushes the placenta, and then it's like this weird alien thing that comes out. It just like my belly, just like I can see my belly actually stretching out. Like it's really early for that. Like I feel like other women I know that they experience like the foot pushing out at like 8
Hmm.
months or something, where you can like see the feet. But I can like, it's like, yeah, it's weird.
Hmm.
Totally like an alien.
I remember I maybe it was like 6 or 7 months. I remember my my belly just completely changing shape, like being round and then suddenly being oblong, sticking out in this weird direction, and then
Yeah.
moving again. And it was like right across the top.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so crazy.
weird. My daughter
Wow.
was like, Mama, your belly and your boobs are so fat. You have a fat baby. Like, yeah, I do.
Oh, that is funny because I when I was pregnant, I had this idea that my breasts would get bigger afterwards because then I was going to be full of milk. And like my breasts, I can't believe how big they were when I was pregnant. I look at pictures of myself and they're gigantic, and they did not stay that big after she was
Yeah.
born.
Yeah. I've had to start wearing like, these kind of like tank top bras or whatever, because they're so heavy now that I
Mm.
can't, like having no support is just kind of uncomfortable. And my right boob is always bigger than my left one, but now it's like double the size. So Every morning when I'm like stretching or whatever and I look down, it's like hanging way farther than the other one. I'm like, okay. So yeah,
Huh.
interesting.
Yeah. Wow. New
Anyway,
adventures.
what's happening with you?
Well, I moved recently,
Yes.
and that was cool. It's only been like 9, what's today? Tuesday? It's only been like 9 days since I moved, and it's like my old life like doesn't even exist anymore.
It's awesome.
It's so, well, it is so awesome, but it's so interesting. Um, oh man, I had a like big uh eye-opening things happen in my, I guess in my meditation this morning around this, where we've talked a lot about anger on this show, and this idea that, it's like a guide, right? It's a lamppost of like showing you what's out of alignment or where you need to look. Um and I, like, the first morning that I moved, the morning like the first morning I was here in my new place, I do a breathing practice every morning, and I went out and sunny and beautiful, and I took the stool and I went and just into the yard, and I put my feet in the grass and I sat on the stool and to do my practice, and I had this overwhelming sense of like, here I am, like, this is who I am. And it's like I've just spent all of these years so frustrated and angry and just like fighting against myself, I guess, and against my life. Like, for what? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of growth in there, but just I guess it was just realizing that, this talk of coming home, like that we're all trying to find ourselves, like coming home to ourselves, that whole idea, and coming home to God. And um that really, truly, as everyone says, like, it is always there. We are always here. We just fight against ourselves or resist the circumstances that could show us who we are. And just like, after so many years of like trying to get back to myself, I sit down, I put my feet in the grass, and I'm like, here I am. This is who I am. And it's just, all the other stuff just like ceased to exist. I mean, I still have my things. I'm totally dealing with stuff, but um, really just a profound change of life experience in the last 9 days that um, I can't even begin to like work my mind around. But that's part of the point, because the thing I realized this morning in my meditation is that the space that I'm in right now is just so it's flowing so much. There's so much ease and organic movement of one thing to the next. And that, I was thinking about it in Joe Dispenza terms, where the analytical mind is what gets you kind of like out of the present moment and out of that experience, and how that's the difference, is that I am thinking about things, but I'm seeing so much more how this planning analytical experience is um, doesn't isn't necessarily harmonious with like the flow of my life that I'm experiencing right now, that I really enjoy. And seeing how, like, Eckhart Tolle talks about um, using the concept of time like only on a as needed basis, and otherwise just be here. Like, if you know you need to be somewhere in 20 minutes, then like deal with it in that chunk of reality, but otherwise just like forget time exists. Don't go into the past, don't go into the future, just be here. And I'm in this like blessed experience right now where I have more awareness of that, much more able to just be in stillness and to presence with what I'm experiencing, and not be stressed about time, just have the awareness of it, but not be obsessed with it. And I think one of the big pieces that has made that possible, that has shifted, is that I feel a massive amount of support in my current life experience that I have not felt in the last 6, 7, maybe 8 years, 7 years. And um, that sense of like, I'm not alone in this. I'm not 100% solely responsible for all parts of my life experience. I don't have to micromanage every single thing. It just makes this incredible world of difference so that I can actually relax into presence because I know that I'm held, and I'm held by the great mother, I'm held by source, I'm held in that way, and then I'm also held by friends and community and connections, and then I'm held in my living space now. And it's just in all these different ways, just feeling like I can relax because I don't have to hold everything all by myself.
Yeah, it's like safety.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
So the the coming home, like feeling like, oh, here I am, like I'm home here or whatever, like in yourself. Do you think that that is because you're now in like a nature setting, you're in an environment that's more in alignment with like what you've been wanting to be in over the years, or is it just the whole, like, I mean, yeah, like what is that? The
I think it's a lot of things. I was thinking when I was pregnant, and I got a massage when I was pregnant, and by this woman who was too intuitive, psychic, whatever body. She, she'd like read your body as she was massaging you. Uh-oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
We had I don't know, you froze on my screen.
Oh.
Um, my internet connection is unstable, so we'll see. So anyway, I got this massage from this woman who could read your energy on your body and like psychically, see your timeline and stuff like that. And for the most part, I really don't appreciate a lot of things that she shared, but there were a couple things that stuck with me that were perhaps helpful. And one of them was that I need people and place. And I was thinking about this morning. I was like, I don't know if anybody doesn't need the right people in the right place, but I guess that was something that stuck out in my energy. Like that it was really important that I had this right kind of community and that I was in the right kind of place. And so I was thinking about that this morning, and it's like, of course, like I'm finally in the place and I'm finally with the people. And God, what a world of difference that makes, because I know for me, one isn't enough. So yeah, it is being in a more rural place. I mean, everywhere I drive, God, there's like not a bad drive around here. I leave my house. I mean, even when I was living the other place I was living, but here especially, I leave my house and any direction I go is gorgeous. It's just rolling hills, hay fields, with the big balled up rolls of hay and farmhouses and just these gorgeous trees everywhere and rivers and lakes and, mountains views. And I just love this place so much. And and it doesn't matter. I mean, everywhere I go takes 30 minutes or more. I drove like 3 hours yesterday, like 30 minutes, an hour back, it's just all over the place. And it's like, whatever, it's just so nice. So there's that. But then having this community of people where it feels like we support each other and like, oh, you have kids and maybe you want to go do something here. Let me help you. Like, I have a friend who she's really I feel so blessed to have met this person because she's so, in so many ways, I feel like she's modeling things for me that I haven't experienced, but that I've like really been wanting in my life, but I didn't really know how to make it happen. Mm. And she's just sort of come into my life and it's like, here, this is how, it's just ease. You just do it, and maybe that isn't her personal experience of it, but the way it is for me, because of like the burden that it has lifted off my life, is so profound. In just seeing like, you have kids, I have kids, or a kid, and that people have kids, and we can all interact with each other's kids and support them and support you, and we can all like recognize that we're all sharing these responsibilities, and just like being in a community like that is just mind-blowing. It's like, I spent like a good solid year traveling all over the United States, like trying to find community, like an intentional community. I just lived in one, and and it's like, this experience, at least the way it's experienced right now, is the difference. It's hard to explain, but
are the people there, are there people around you right now like your age? Are they older or younger, or are they mostly your age?
It's a mix. It's mostly people in like young kid parent age range, which is
Mhm.
actually quite a quite a range, like
Yeah.
20s to 50s. Um, so
I'm
yeah.
kind of curious because, I did this whole intentional community thing for years throughout my late 20s and early 30s. And um, I came across disharmony and unhealth in a lot of the situations, and Sam and I both came, my partner Sam and I came to the conclusion that, like, we can't build a community with anybody that we're around, so we're going to have to just do the land thing ourselves, and then if you build it, they will come, like the right people will
Mhm.
come, because there was just so much unhealth, like, people, like, I remember one of my friends who's lived in an intentional community since the 80s, in southeastern Oklahoma, and it started out with a lot of families, and now there's four owners and four people who live there, and they don't get along. It's like they've just decided to separate the property, and this is your area and this is mine, and um, we don't have meetings anymore and whatever, so even there's a lot of disharmony. But she met with one of our friends who's like, I want to create this intentional community, but what do you do if somebody's a drunk and you don't want them to be there? And my friend, who happens to be a drunk, was like, well, you don't do anything. Like, that's part of your community. Like, you don't just kick people out because they don't live the way you want to live or whatever, and I mean, that really is like, that is a way to have community. Like, you don't, because somebody has a mental illness or something, you don't just throw them to the curb. I mean, you can, but it's kind of shitty. But so anyway, there was a lot of this stuff like, well, I don't really agree with what you say, so we have beef, and now we're not friends, but all of our friends are friends. It's just a lot of weird stuff. And you know, Sam and I were just like, well, we're just gonna, the only communities we saw that worked were family based, where there was a family or families at the core. Typically it was one family, and then everybody kind of surrounded that family, and they would bring other families in or whatever, but it was like one family's land. And so the only way that we saw it worked, and that makes sense, because there's like a core common belief, like we want a good life for our kids. That's like a basic common belief. And other ones that we saw that were kind of working were like religious, where everybody was on the same page or whatever. And
Yeah.
um, so we were like, okay, well, that's what we want to do, is have like family at the center of any community that we do. And so now we've been here in Ohio for 4 years, not really having any community. It's been really isolating in a lot of ways. Um, and I have kind of gotten to the point where I was just like, that's just how it is right now. And I'm open to this changing. I want it to change, but also, like, um, I'm okay with developing and honing my magical skills right now on my own without having, I have community. They're just all over the world.
Mhm.
So now what's happened for us is this winter, it was like late winter, this guy showed up at our house with his tractor, and he was like a young guy covered in tattoos, like very friendly. He was looking for our neighbors, the Amish neighbors. So he showed up and thought that we were them. And so Sam got to talking to him. And in this like 10-minute conversation, this guy was like, oh, if you need anything down on your farm, I've got this tractor. I can help you out. Like, you want me to come turn your compost pile? And Sam's like, yeah, you can come turn it tomorrow. And he's like, okay, I'll be here. So he shows up the next day with his whole family. He's got three boys and a little baby girl and his wife. They show up, they live a mile from us, like literally just over this hill. Like, they can see our barn from their property. And so they've been really like, I've been really sick, so we haven't been able to hang out with them a lot. But he keeps coming over and working with Sam to do farm projects. And we bought pigs with them, and they're raising the pigs for us. And then, like, Sam's going to help slaughter and all this stuff. And So it's like this thing is happening, right? Like, oh, and so then they have young farmer friends. Like they've only been here a year, but they already know like all these neighbors that we don't know. All of our neighbors directly around us are older or they're Amish, and our Amish neighbors help us a lot. But the older neighbors, they're like, I'm retired. You can borrow my tractor, but I'm not helping you with anything. And they all just kind of keep to themselves or whatever, unless you need something, then they're willing to help you or whatever. But they definitely don't go out of their way to help you. So the other day they had a chicken slaughter. And so they had 100 chickens. And they were like, we're going to have a party. All these people are going to come over. We're going to slaughter all these chickens. You all come over. So we went over there and it was great. It's like all these people, all these kids. And it's like these people who live on this road next to them that are like young farmers. And they're not, it's interesting because they're not necessarily people that are like vibrating at the same frequency as me, but they're, so, I don't know what the deepest connection is going to be, but at least this one family, like, I can see how like we're going to be farming together and doing stuff because they realize we can't like do this on our own. And this is where my partner's at, is like this year I'm pretty much out of commission and probably next year too because of the baby. And so he's like doing all this stuff by himself and is just like, I'm not going to do this anymore. Like I can't farm anymore. I can't do this like this. And so then they come in and it's like, it's just this shift of energy and I can feel this community coming.
Mm.
And, it's like, I know that I'm going to meet them and then we're going to like meet other people through each other and it's going to be this great thing. And we're all right here. And yeah, so I'm just wondering, and they're like our age. So I'm like wondering if the people who I was trying to do this with before, now we've all matured and we've all like figured out our own system. And so now we can come together in this different kind of community where it's not like I don't want to live with people.
Mm.
Sam doesn't want to live with people like, like maybe people on our property, but not like in the same house. It just doesn't work. And so this is great. They're like right down the road and yeah, I don't know. So I'm just wondering if everybody is like maturing and like ready for this real experience of like this neighborly community, or just this community, like, or whatever. Like your idea of community might be different than mine. Like whatever that is, though. Like I wonder if everybody's maturing enough to actually get, or maybe it's just all this planetary stuff, like the where we're at, where it's like now is the time,
Mm.
and before we kind of had to go into our stuff and like figure out what we really wanted or whatever. But it's really great. And so I'm excited that that's happening for you and it's happening for me. And I'm like, yeah, it's happening.
Well, and what you're saying too, I mean, about how it's happening. That's a really important distinction in my experience too, that like the intentional community shared living space isn't necessarily the end all be all or the only way. I mean, clearly it's not the only way, but there are some distinctions that have appeared in my, from my move that have really highlighted what feels like community to me and what meets that need for community. And part of it is I am living in a house with other people. I'm living in somebody else's house right now, and basically all adults. And that experience in and of itself is just phenomenal. Like, and I mean, the reason that I'm able to live here is because there is, shared values, shared perspective, so there's a harmonious way of being here together. And then, yes, like you're saying, like, well, I guess you didn't say it explicitly, but communication. So, but in this maturing of like, we know how we operate, we know what we need. And so do, these people, and then being able to speak that to each other and being able to just have like clear communication and clear understanding. And then I also have this budding community that I don't live with. And I mean, there is some close proximity, but there's also people, I mean, it's also kind of the way it is here. Like everything is spread out, but it's all these like, beautiful 30-minute drives. So it's like, yeah, then maybe it's kind of far, but so what? And so I feel like in some senses, maybe people are more willing to drive further distances to get that community, because it's not like you have to drive across town through a city. But that facilitates gathering of people from different areas, um, and a shared experience in that way. So I guess for me, it's helping me to understand that like living alone creates this sense of I have to do it all myself. Even if I have connection and support elsewhere, I still feel very much like it's all on me to get out the door to get to that community, and the community isn't immediately accessible. And so then living in like immediate proximity to some people, but then not having that be my entire world and my entire community, so that it all doesn't fall on that. It's
Yeah.
like a distribution of what needs get met where. And um, yeah, I don't know. I just feel so blessed to be in my current living situation and experience, that I don't have the words.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
About time.
Oh God. No kidding. And one of the other things that came up this morning in my meditation was um, related to that idea of that we have it within us all along. Um, that it was about light and darkness, but it was this feeling of I've spent the last, I don't know, since 2013, I feel like I have been consciously, in some ways, like holding a torch in pitch blackness, and like I know there's a light here, and I'm gonna hold this torch, and I'm gonna do everything I can to keep it burning. But like this blackness is super oppressive, and I feel completely isolated and alone in like holding this torch, and that it's been this mega battle inside of me to believe that like I should even bother keeping this torch lit. And like if blackness is just what it is, then like WTF, like let it burn out, and um and I guess in the awareness that I had was that it wasn't even about like my torch becomes so bright that it takes over. It's like, no, that actually the blackness doesn't exist. And I've just had this sense that like it's like I'm the lone wolf here. It's me holding the torch up against everything, and I'm up against everything. And then it's like I just stepped into the light. I was like, oh, I don't even have to do that anymore. And I never had to, because it was always, like the light is actually everywhere all around me all the time. I was just like, I just went into the closet and closed the door.
Yeah. Well, that's what Yogananda says. He says like the darkness is Maya, right? This is delusion. Like it doesn't actually exist. All there actually is light everywhere. And that's God. Like it's just the light of God everywhere, all over, all the time. And you're just blind, so you can't see it. So all you have to do is like open your eyes, just like open up. Yeah. Yeah. Feels good to open up. I've been having this realization lately of just feeling really, well, Sam's mowing the lawn outside, so you're going to hear that. You're the lawnmower probably. But anyway, I've been having this realization. I've been going for walks in the mornings, and I walk down, not very far, just down the road. There's this little cemetery, and it's a really old cemetery. Like the graves are like from the 17 and 1800s, And I love cemeteries. They're like some of my favorite places in the world. They're just always really peaceful. And so I go and sit there, and there's a great view. And I just been having this realization when I've been doing that of just really appreciating my life, and just the level of comfort that I'm getting to in myself. And like all of these great things are happening for us, and they've been happening for me, but my partner's been kind of lagging behind because he's really been like, a lot of stuff fell apart for us last year, and I just like let it go. I was like, whatever. But he's kind of been fighting that and like trying to hold on to it. out of fear, mostly financial fear or whatever. But um, now he's getting to this point where he's like, yesterday, he just told me, I think that I'm going to take the year off from farming next year, and we're just going to buy all the produce from our neighbor and we'll just sell it. And that's what we'll do. And I'm going to take the year off and like, because what's happening on the farm is not working. Like, it's not working, it's not sustainable for us. And it's like we're at the point where, are we going to buy a tractor? But it's like the tractor is not sustainable either. So now, and I've been wanting to get a horse. So we've been talking about getting a working horse, just like a single plow, and using a horse. And so there's just all these ideas happening. And he's finally like getting to this point of being like, yeah, I'm just going to give this up and do something different. And it's okay if we just take a year off and don't grow anything and just buy it. And because we're going to make the same amount of money, is what we realized. He's like, it's kind of silly for us to be paying for labor and then paying for these other people's labor when they are growing better than us and growing the same stuff that we're growing. And they're already growing part of what we sell for wholesale and stuff anyway. So yeah, it's just this great conversation. And so there's all this stuff happening of like, yeah, we can actually relax into this life, and it doesn't have to be a struggle all the time like it has been for the last few years. Cause we started farming right when we had a 2-week-old baby, and it's just been crazy ever since. There's just so much work, and it's just really been the two of us and our Amish neighbors that we hire once or twice a week. And it's like pretty intense. And so, now we're realizing like, oh, we actually just need to enjoy this life that we have and work on some other projects. So like one of the things we're working on is building a guest house outside, and like a guest cabin, and then a studio space for me attached to it, and then fixing up the barn so that we could get the horses, and just all of this stuff. And so there's just this new inspiration coming in. And I think it's a lot of stuff, but I think part of it has to do with this knowing other farmers who are doing the same thing. And they're like, yeah, we're just trying to do this, like, and make all this stuff happen. So let's help each other. And then part of it also is just like timing and maturing and just letting go of a lot of ideals that we have had. And also just really getting, when we started doing this, it was like there's been a lot of stuff from day one that I've not been in alignment with. And it was told to me by Sam, like, this is the entry point. This is where we're going to enter. And then we're going to get to the place that is in alignment with us. And I kind of thought that was BS from the beginning. And I argue about it all the time, but I've kind of, I've just kind of gone along with it up to a certain point. But then there has been things where I'm just like, I'm just not going to do that. So if you're going to do that, you're going to do that on your own, because that's just not in alignment with what I want to be doing. And so now there's more of a unification of, one, our visions, and then two, realizing that, yeah, all the stuff that's not in alignment for us fell away last year, right? Like it all fell away. And that was such a blessing. And so now everything that is in alignment with us is showing up. And like I can see so much potential for things happening. Like one of the things is I don't want to be connected to the power grid. So, when we moved to this house, it's got like everything's electric, and we heat with wood. And that was like a big issue for me. But I always just had it in my mind, well, it's all electric already, so it'd be easy just to like go to solar or wind or something like that, just like connect to that. I never thought it would be able to happen. But now we're at the point where I'm like, that could like maybe happen in the next year or two, like that we start doing that process. Like this cabin that we're building, it's going to be off grid completely. And so it's like, I can see the stuff is happening, and it's going to become more and more of our dream life all the time. And like, we've got these orchard trees that are growing, and we're planting more trees all the time. And yeah, it's just nice to see the evolution of our dream actually becoming like our dream, instead of the way that you have to do this is you have to get a loan and you have to buy a house and all this stuff, which was all stuff that I was not okay with, but I went along with. And yeah, like, I don't know. It's just interesting and it's fun. And I'm starting to get to the point where I'm feeling content, which is this is like only the second time in my life I've ever felt contentment on any level. And so that feels good. And everything is moving to right relationship, and it's all unfolding. And
Yeah.
a lot of my work with this baby has been letting go of everything, because I've just gotten so many powerful messages that like this kid is not going to be anything. It's going to be like basically a superhero. So, yeah, it's just kind of interesting. I did this reading the other day with this woman, and I don't really know anything about this stuff. So I'm not going to try to even go into too much detail, but basically it's like a sacred geometry reading. And so you choose a shape, like a crystal shape or whatever. And then they, about the baby, and her messages or whatever, her connection to source has told her that from the year 2020 to 2029, there's going to be these three waves of these, uh, I don't know, higher frequency beings, like babies coming in. And I mean, I think this has been happening for a long time, but this is like a new wave of like a jumping another frequency of these babies that are coming in. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll get this reading and see what's up. And because I keep hearing that from so many people, and I can see that. And the kids around, I'm like, well, this kid's like totally magical. And so I chose this shape as a dodecahedron. And she's like reading all this stuff about this stuff, you know, pulling all these tarot cards and doing this whole reading on it. And it was just like, you know, this baby is basically just like a powerhouse. And so and one of the things that she said is what my teacher has been telling me the whole time is like, you're not going to be able to communicate with this baby unless you let go of like every belief that you have, and like let go of like everything that you think that you know, and just like go with whatever's happening. And I can feel that in myself. Like, you know, I was already getting there with my teacher and with all these health things that I've been having. As soon as I decided to start letting go, and like my work every day has been like with my breath is just like letting go of stuff. And then things started shifting. And so to hear that from this other source who's totally unrelated was really cool. And, you know, also pretty terrifying because I'm pretty controlling in a lot of ways. And, but I'm also so ready. I'm so ready to just let it go. I'm so ready to be done with the way that my mind works. I'm so ready to be done with the belief systems that I've been indoctrinated into. And I'm tired of like fighting to get them out, like weeding. And it's the same thing with our garden out here. Like in year one, I told Sam, I was like, I will not weed. I'm not weeding. This is ridiculous. I'm not weeding any of this stuff. It's too much work. And now this year, he's like, the weeds are out of control. You haven't even been out there. You don't even know, but you need to go out there and look. Like, I mean, the Amish girls, bless them, they're out there just like ripping these weeds out for us. And but it's like the same thing in a spiritual sense. Like I'm just done pulling the weeds. Like I'm just gonna start over here with this whole other system, and let that be taught to me by this super baby that's coming in. And just, yeah, I'm just done with it. Like I am like even just like functioning, like even the thought, like I'm can be pretty rude a lot of times, or I can just be like say whatever I want and feel fine with it, but there's always like this voice in the back of my head that's like, well, maybe that wasn't so nice, or like, could you have said that a different way? And so I had this experience like yesterday or the day before, where somebody in my close proximity was like getting all up in my business about, are you taking prenatal vitamins? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And I was just like feeling really oppressed by it. And so I just responded back. I was like, my health situation is none of your business and you need to butt out. And I was like, that's exactly what I wanted to say. And afterwards I was like, I still wanted to say that. I don't feel bad about it at all. And like, I kept thinking about it, like, should I feel bad? I don't feel bad at all that I said that. Like, I don't care if they took it as me being rude. Like, they need to butt out. That is the deal. And the response that I got back was like, okay, like, okay. And so I was like, oh, great. Yeah. Like, so I don't know. There's just so many things that I feel coming to resolution, maybe, or coming full circle, or becoming whole again, or I don't know what it is, veils being lifted, whatever, all kinds of good stuff.
Well, everything that you're saying kind of just is taking me into the torch analogy that I made earlier, just in that um, like the controlling part of us is the darkness, right? It's the blackness around the torch. Like everything that we do that is not surrendered, you could say, is the blackness around us,
Yeah, it's all
right?
fear of the unknown. The darkness is just the unknown.
Right.
And so we're like, I want to know. I have to know everything.
Yeah. And so every time that we just are willing to just be with what is, that tension can just subside and more light can shine or more peace and ease can flow through. And um, yeah, one thing, hearing your storyline, your timeline of your progression and where you are right now, it's it's touching on something that I have been, well, I've been trying not to grapple with it because I don't want to go all analytical mind on this situation, but what I see in myself is this habitual pattern of like arriving at a point of less suffering because some new situation presents itself, or I get a new book that is the answer that I'd been looking for years, or something like that. And my immediate knee-jerk first response is, oh, I could have saved myself years of suffering if I had just followed through on this 3 years ago instead of just doing it now, that kind of thing. Um, and and it's just pointless, first of all. But I just realized, or I guess the process that I'm in right now is working very much on presence and the awareness that all of that mind muck is what can perpetuated the suffering for all those years. And it's not, and I don't want to bring that forward with me. And so every time that something comes in that is a potential for a forward shift in the direction that I want to go, um, having like this conversation with myself about like just be with this as it is right now. And it's this place of having to accept everything as it is, which means if you're going to accept everything as it is right now, you have to accept everything as it was, because it's not separate. And and understanding like this idea of right timing and right, that everything is perfect exactly as it is, and the timing is exactly as it should be. And like I can, logic my way into things and say, well, okay, I can see who I am now and where I am now. And if I weren't exactly who I am and where I am right now, um, I wouldn't be in alignment with these current experiences because, well, I wouldn't be. I would be a different resonance that would be out of resonance with this, the resonance of this experience. Um, and and so I like understand that conceptually, but then there's that part that's like, yes, but blah 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 blah. Couldn't it have, and it's this ridiculous like story looping thing, um, that I get into, and I think the reason I get into it is because it's like the same thing that I struggle with astrology, which has really been coming up lately. This idea of, well, is it the stars, and as am I just like tied to them and will always be pulled along at their pace and their way at their time, or am I could I have had a different birth experience with my kid and completely change the whole timeline? And I think it's both, which is the thing that kind of sucks in terms of dealing with like a power struggle in my brain. But the only place through it that makes any sense in terms of finding peace is that we are co-creators, and so that we are always a choice and we're co-creating this experience, and in co-creating it we are not necessarily at the effect of, but that we're part of something that is way bigger than us, and we have the co-creative ability to choose what we connect with in that bigger picture, I guess. So like I could, the most beneficial way I think to use this sort of um, mind game that I play with myself is to look at it and say, I'm super happy with where I am right now. I'm like in love with every part of my life experience right now, which God, I can't reflect. I think I remember the last time that happened and it was like in 2013. So, this is awesome. And I had a pretty shitty 5 years in there. And, um, and I worked my ass off to no longer have shitty years. And I know there'll be challenges ahead, but like I have been working so much and I got myself to a place where I created a certain resonance in my field that was able to draw in the resonance of the experiences that I'm currently having. And I could have just sat on my ass for those 5 years and just been like, this is it. This is my life. I'm going to suffer forever, which
Take me now.
I definitely had a lot of those moments, but I guess I've been trying to come to terms with, who I feel I am now, because I feel so like, I put my feet in the grass. I'm like, oh, here I am, that awareness of here I am. Like I had to do so much, but I didn't have to do anything to be who I am, who I feel like at peace inside myself with. Um, and, that I like, I lost my train of thought around that.
Well, I think what it makes me think of is I think that this is what I see similarly for both of us, and I wonder how many people who are listening are experiencing this too. But so when I started working with my teacher Donna Maria, her whole thing was like, don't focus on the stuff you don't want. Like if there's a pile of dog shit, you don't look at the pile of dog shit, you walk on by and you look over here. And so that's a lot of the work I've been doing with her. And I was telling her about this getting upset with like my mom or somebody, and just like, why am I just getting so tangled up in this? Like, I know my mother's never going to change. Why am I getting so tangled up in this? And she's like, because you're in her pool. She's got her pool of her frequency, and you're in her pool trying to fight out a corner of the pool and being like, stay away from my corner. She's like, you need to get the fuck out of the pool and get your own pool and create your own pool, like carry your pool around with you. And like, what I feel like is happening for me is that for the first time, I'm actually like, I was like, how do I do that? How do I do that? How do I do that? And it's just like repetition, right? Like you just have to keep going towards what you want. And so now I feel like that I am at this point, and I think it sounds like you're at this point where finally, like, we put out this frequency, held this torch for so long, and now we're being reflected back to, as promised, we're being reflected back to the things the life, the feelings, whatever that we have been wanting, and the frequency that we've been trying to hold on our own. And so then what I surmise is going to happen is that as you, and it sounds like this is kind of happening with you, that like as we now are able to pull in the stuff that's vibrating at the frequency we want to move into, whether this be relationships or whatever, then it's easier to hold the frequency, because now we're not the only ones holding the frequency. We're not holding the torch in the dark by ourselves. Now it's like what you're saying, like now we're in the light, like now we're in the flow, like we've jumped into the current, like we're in there. And so like the current just pushes you. And yeah, I definitely can see how that's unfolding for me, where I'm like, oh, so that's how you, and so, with my partner, he's not quite there yet. He's still kind of hanging on to the political stuff or whatever. And like, if nothing else, what I learned last year is that it's all a fucking joke. Like all the political stuff, all the stuff that anything you see out there is a total and complete joke. Like, how can I take any of it seriously? All I can do is laugh about it because it's so ridiculous. And so I don't even pay attention to anything that's going on because it has no impact on my life. I don't care if a certain law gets made. Like, I'm not going to follow it if I don't want to. I've never followed the rules, no matter what. Like, people will probably judge me because I'm going to say this, but I'm not a seatbelt wearer because it's uncomfortable to wear my seatbelt. I make my daughter wear her seatbelt, but I don't wear my freaking seatbelt, and I don't care. And people bitch at me about it all the time. I'm like, I don't care. It's my life. And I want to be comfortable in the car, and it hurts my uterus. So I'm not wearing the seatbelt. And, so there's just like all these little things like that where the things you're supposed to do, I just never do them. And so I'm like, nothing's going to change for me. I'm just always going to use my own judgment to live my life, not, what somebody else tells me is the way, the rule, the law of how things should be. Like that just doesn't ever work for me. So, yeah, I think that this is all just unfolding perfectly.
So what you're saying is making me, I was thinking about this earlier, something that you said at the beginning of everything last year, where we were talking about, how people were freaking out because everything, like their whole life was crumbling. And we were talking about how we just like weren't really feeling any of it. And I was like, yeah, like nothing has changed. Like I'm living my life the exact same way. Nothing really feels different. Um, and your response was, well, that just is related to like how much of a like bubble or a buffer you've put around yourself or you've created in your life. And um, like there's a lot of different responses to the world situation where I live, but there's this feeling here of just um, like there's a massive buffer, and we have like such an opportunity to create that here because there's just like an abundant direct access to food and other things and natural spaces and all all the kind of basic elements of life. um, and then there's a ton of people who are like-minded in if only in like supporting themselves and um, caring about food and stuff like that. So um, in terms of like what you're saying about everything being just like a whole game and stuff, that I'm having more and more this lived experience of um, nothing. Even as a kid with politics, I never had any interest in them. I never had any interest at all, and it felt like it had nothing to do with me and my life. Um, and I mean, I guess it didn't in the way that it didn't, but um, I was still more like of the world, of that kind of world. And now it's just maybe coming full circle, but I I have these moments where I like forget that the world exists in a way. Like I forget that like any of that exists because it's so completely irrelevant to my life. And I mean that feels really nice. And I mean I guess you could hear that and say like, well, that's a really privileged existence, which yeah, I mean maybe it is.
Uh,
I could see. No, you have issues with that privilege.
Well, the
Just
thing is that you've created that. You've
well,
created that in your adult life.
and I
And
also recognize that there are different realities
yeah,
that exist, and people are born into different realities, and some of those are it's much harder to extract yourself. So
right.
I get that. Um, and it's also like I don't know. It's like it could be seen that way, and at the same time, it because it has nothing. It's like it has nothing to do with anything. I remember being in high school and people, everybody's talking like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go to college? What are you going to do after you graduate? Who do you want to be? What do you want to be when you grow up? And my response, I was just so set on like, why do I have to do anything? I don't understand this. Like, I have to
Yeah.
go do something. Like, I want to buy a little cabin in the Highlands of Scotland and like write poetry or, maybe be a teacher and like walk down to my little country schoolhouse or something. It was just like some funny idea I had, but it was based in this idea of like, I just want to live my life. Like, why do I have to do anything because you're telling me that I have to do something?
Yeah.
And so that idea of like I just want to live my life has always been there. And I'm in this place here that seems to be so supported. um And I feel like probably, the events of the last year have really shifted things for a lot of people towards that. Like, I feel like a lot more people are like, dude, I just want to do what I want to do. I just want to live my life. I want to be free. And that manifests in different ways for different people, obviously. But for me, that means like just doing, I don't know, doing things in the way that feels like resonance. And there's no resonance with me attaching to this, the storyline or this idea of there being something outside of this. Like, this is my, it feels like this is my entire world. Like, I know that there's a world out there, and like things are happening and people are deciding things for large groups of people and all that. But um, yeah, it's funny, and trying to hold both of those things at the same time too, like recognizing it's a both and, it's not a, this or, um, and that, yeah, so I don't know if anybody has seen the movie Ever After, um, with Drew Barrymore. It's like a Cinderella story. And well, I'm going to quote it. There's a scene, so it's, that's like 1500s, and it's the original, quote unquote true story of Cinderella. And the there's this moment where the prince he's like learning so much from the Cinderella character, and he felt like, what he says to her is, I used to feel like if I cared about anything, I had to care about everything, and I would go stark raving mad. But then he found his purpose. And I think that concept, like this all or nothing thing, like that quote has just stuck with me, because it points to my way. I mean, it's sort of a black and white thinking way, but it points to my default way of relating to things, where like I either have to be completely, if I'm going to live this kind of life or be this kind of person, I have to check off every single box on that list and do all those things, because if I don't, then like, what's the point? If I do something that is in any way contradictory to that vision or that person or that lifestyle, then like, I'm a fake, or I'm not, it's not what it's supposed to be or whatever. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that. Um, and that's polarity. Like, everything's been polarized. Like, these people are good, these people are bad, these people should, are doing this thing, these people are doing that thing, and there's no overlapping. And just seeing like how that operates on the macrocosm and how that operates on the microcosm, and like in so many ways, in terms of like all the masking stuff, lifting mask mandates, and who is a masker, who's not, vaccine, like all that stuff. I've just had a really big change. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess I've been clear in how I've felt about things, which has lended me to be more extreme with my boundaries, I guess, just because I really didn't want to even dip my toe into some of the stuff on the other side. Um, but in the last like 2, 3 weeks, I've had a series of experiences in relationships with people where um, I just got really clear that I am not. I mean, I say this, I'm sure I got some big blind spots on this. There's probably something behind me that I haven't seen yet that will, trigger a new wave of this. But just that I'm not interested in living out that polarity, because it sucks. Because I really want relationships. And then probably, I mean, there've been various reasons why this has um, become more apparent to me recently, and like triggered stronger heart feelings around having like good relationships with people, and relationships based on love versus ideas, or like shared ideals about things. But just realizing that if I don't want to create walls. I don't want to create boundaries that are like blocking out people because of their choices. And I mean, so my daughter's in camp this week, and it's like there's a park as part of this school. And so this camp that she's in is like this awesome nature based, like totally amazing thing where they're like in the woods the whole day. But then it appears that the school, like there's also a camp happening there. And I dropped her off, and then I drove by. I was like, oh, there's a camp happening there. Look at those kids. Look at those kids. Look at where they're going to be. Look at where they're going to be. And I was like, hands down, like, man, I don't want to be anything. I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
And there's like, okay, whatever. That's the world they live in. That's what their families do. And that's fine. But just an awareness of like, I don't want to be there. I don't want anything to do with that. And um, so just the, the difference of discernment versus judgment and walls, and just seeing how, like, I could feel, for instance, anxiety around, or like have an awareness, like, there's thousands of people around who got vaccinated and maybe they're shedding all over everything and who knows. And like, I could freak out about that, and I could avoid all people who have gotten vaccinated and like create walls and separate and all that stuff. Or you'd be like, whatever, you gave me a hug and I'm fine. Like, I care about you. We have a relationship. And I'm like gonna go to the farmer's market and know that probably 95% of the people there got their vaccine, and or whatever, got the shot, and I'll be fine because I'm choosing to be fine, and I don't want to like put myself in a box, because I totally imprisoned myself for the last year up until like a month ago.
Yeah.
Or a couple months ago.
Yeah. I'm there with you. I talk a lot about walking the middle path. And for me, this is like part of what it is, because it's like in this world of polarity, black and white and all this stuff, it's like in the middle, there's so much room. It feels so spacious to me to feel like I can just weave in and out of wherever everybody's at, And the truth is like, I've had tons of eye-opening experiences as well around this whole thing this last year. And I also had the resistance of like, oh my God, I don't want to be da da da, and I don't want to be around these kind of people or whatever, or they're all lost their fucking minds, whatever. But a couple of things happened that really, really cemented things in shifting out of any of that, either of the poles. And one of them was that I went to this meeting, and it was all these business owners here in the state, around the state, and they are all business owners and people who are supporting these business owners. And their whole thing is like anti-mask, anti-vaccine, or just not really anti-vaccine, but freedom of choice or whatever around health stuff. And but definitely anti-mask. And I went to this meeting looking for camaraderie because I was feeling really isolated last year. And when I went to this meeting, it was like, what I experienced was that the majority of, first of all, the majority of the people who were there, I think at least all of them, I mean, it was very vocal that they were all Christians, right? And I don't have any problem with that. I'm not a Christian. But they were Christian. And so there was this, specific way of interacting with God that's just not my way. And so I was aware of that. And I was like, okay, well, here's something that kind of sets us apart. Okay. And then the other thing that was obvious is like, these are people who are typical business owners, not in the way that Sam and I are business owners, where we're like young, tattooed, whatever, like radical people or whatever. But these are like, what you think of when you think of a business owner in town is like a mature adult, like, wears a certain kind of clothes, like suits and stuff, whatever, like these kind of people that were very normal. They're normies. We'll call them normies. Okay. Just like really normal, like straight laced, like, typical people or whatever. And I was like, okay, these are like not the kind of people I ever surround myself with. Right. And, but we're both business owners and like had this thing in common. Right. And then I kept going to these meetings, and it was like so many things were getting said that I was like, yeah, I'm totally there with you. And then so many things that were getting said where I was like, no, like, one big thing was like a perspective of abortion and like just, how this conservative pro-life thing can come across a lot of times as really pretty hateful and judgmental and all of this stuff. And that's not really something that I want to get into. And I really don't think it's my business at all what anybody does in that department. So, um, and I also see that there's this black pastor there who his big thing is like anti-abortion. He has this book he wrote, and it's like 14 million black babies are killed a year, and da 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 da. And I get that what he's saying is true and real, and I get that Planned Parenthood began and still is a eugenics project, and it's like there to like eliminate the black race, and like that's the foundation of Planned Parenthood. I get that, all of that stuff. And also like it's like I don't have a dog in that fight. Like that's not my area that I'm interested in. So there was like all these things where I was like, yeah, I can relate, and yeah, I can't relate. And and a big thing was like I'm sitting here with these people who are the same exact people who I was rebelling against when I was a kid, because I grew up around all those people, this conservative Christian small town in Oklahoma, and all that comes with that. And these people were very much like that. And I was like, well, isn't this interesting that I rebelled against these people? And so that's when I became like a liberal, became whatever, and on my way to becoming radicalized. And like now here I am sitting here talking to these people and having great conversations and enjoying their company and all of this stuff. And so that was one big thing where I was like, okay, so it's people are just hopping fences, right? Like, and what I started to see too is there's a lot of people like me who were like, man, I can't believe I kind of want to go to this Trump rally, like I never would. And then like, I remember this guy we bought a car from, he was like, yeah. And then I went to the Trump rally and there's all these people being like, yeah, fucking kill them all. And he's like, whoa, no, that's not what I want to be. That's not what I'm trying to talk about, like, and it's like, there was just like, there was more people like me intermixed with that so there was more people kind of like, okay, well, I can't be over here anymore, so I'm going to come over here, but I don't know if I want to be over here. So then that like forces you into the middle path, right? Then you have to become autonomous. So that was like one huge thing that happened, and over several things. And then another one is we get this newspaper called Farm and Dairy that somebody bought for us. It's like a really worthless newspaper, but there's there's like this really great pastor who writes in there, and he writes this thing in the back, and it's like every time he writes something, I'm like, yeah, I can get down with this. Like, it's a nice little write-up that he does. And one of the things he said, which is something that I've been saying to my partner, is he said somebody asked him why he doesn't put political signs in his yard, and he said, because it doesn't matter if I'm for this person or that person. If I put a political sign in my yard, I've closed the door on somebody. Mm-hmm. And like, that's what I tell my partner all the time. He's like, I'm going to put this flag up. I'm like, we're not putting flags in our yard. We're not putting political signs up, because either way, like if we were to put a Trump sign in our yard, people are going to assume a certain thing that they assume about Trump supporters, right? And that's not me. Like, I'm not like those people, but I also am kind of like those people, because I'm like, I want freedom. Like, I want to be able to make my own healthcare choices. Like, I want to be able to live my life and not have somebody else tell me how I should live it, right? And like, yeah, so like I could get pegged into that. If I put like a Biden sign up, people are like, oh, they're a Democrat, da 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 da. Like, there's this other way that they're living, and that's not true. Like, I'm not either of those things. So it's like you peg yourself into this hole of being one or the other if you participate in any of that. And so like when I read that pastor, he's like, it closes the door on somebody. I was like, yeah, exactly. That's my whole thing. Like, if I get down with either of these people, I'm taking a side and I'm closing the door on somebody else. And that's just not what I've ever been trying to do. Like, I can't say that I'm about love and then just like shut people out because they're different from me or whatever. And that can apply to so many things in our culture right now, of how we're all just like, oh, you're in that category, not even going to have this conversation. Oh, you're in that category, not even going to look at your face. Like, and I think it's easy for people to assume that I'm talking about like conservative people do that, but really the worst people that I've met that do this are people who proclaim to be liberal people. They're like, we want freedom for everybody, but if you don't agree with the way that we want freedom, then you aren't invited. Like, we're not going to talk to you. And it's like, okay, like that doesn't make any sense. There's so many contradictions, and I just don't. I mean, you look like a fucking idiot whenever you do that, and I do not like looking stupid, so I'm not going to participate in that for that reason. But also, like, that's just not what I'm here for. I'm not here for that. Like, I'm here to like enjoy my life, and like you were saying earlier, I had that same thing as a kid. Like, I just want to live. Like, whenever I graduated high school, they like asked us to write this blurb for the newspaper of what we wanted to do. I was like, I don't even care. So I just made up some bullshit thing about how I wanted to be an attorney and like do all this stuff. I had never thought about being an attorney. I don't care. I would never do that. Like, I just don't. I just wanted to always live my life. I just always wanted to live my life. And that's still what I want to do. I just want to live my life. And ordinary is fine because I've had plenty of drama in my life and I just don't need it. I'm totally okay with ordinary. And every extraordinary person I've ever met, every medicine person I've ever met is totally ordinary. It's like you see like these ayahuasca shaman wearing like a Nike swoosh t-shirt and a hat backwards, and people are like, that's not a shaman because they don't have feathers, and they turn out to be like the most powerful person you've ever met in your life. And it's like, yeah, ordinary, totally okay with it. At this point we need a little more ordinary.
Hmm. You know, there's the quote from, well, I'll probably get it wrong because I don't think I've ever actually read the Bible, but I know what I remember is at some point Jesus said, I think there was somebody who was going to be stoned, and he came out and said, "He who is without sin cast the first stone."
Yeah.
And that has that has come up to me a lot lately, because I what I've realized, it's okay. See if I can get organized here. Part of this transition out of my old living situation into my new living situation was this like almost immediate awareness that, when you're in the darkness, you think that you're like holding the torch by yourself. You think the darkness is it. You think that's real. And then as soon as you're out of it, it's like, oh, you can see again, right? So you can see that that wasn't real and it wasn't all there was. But you don't know what you don't know until you know it. You don't see what you can't see until you can see it. And um, so this transition for me was like was a big shift in that of um, seeing the obvious, but it was not obvious before. And part of that shift, it's been happening. It's been in the works for the last year, and a lot for the last 6 months. But this shift of like that feeling of here are people who have sort of this fixed idea about things, and then here are all these other people who have this fixed idea about things. And obviously there's shades of gray, there's nuances, there's not everybody's like on the exact same list of like, I believe this, that, and the other. But sort of a generally, this way of thinking over here and this way of thinking over here. And feeling how like I know I'm not this one over here, but that one over there, like you're saying, like doesn't, like I'm more aligned with it, but it also kind of doesn't feel that great. And I'm hanging out with people who have this perspective, and do I have that perspective? I don't know. If I have that perspective, it feels really judgy. And do I want to be judging? I don't want to be judging. I'm having a hard enough time stopping myself from judging without like having even more fixed ideas about all these other things, right? And then encountering, different people along the way who operate in a sort of, well, operate in the material world, operate with an analytical um, mode, I guess. And what I realized is that like I like some of these people. They're nice people. They have good hearts. They're caring. They're friendly. Like we can become friends. And there's this sort of like cap on my comfort level being vulnerable or being fully associated with them, or um, like I may never get super close to some people because like nobody wants to be judged. And it's not that they would be judging me, but it's like that thought that if you are if you're making a judgmental statement about X, Y, or Z, then we're operating in a polarity judgment world where is there space for somebody like me who feels like I've done a ton of terrible things, who feels like a terrible person so much of the time? I don't want to be judged. I just want to be able to like let go of all that and be like my true, loving, wonderful, open-hearted, caring, compassionate, respectful self. Um, and realizing actually this is this is a massive mega moment right now because I've been so black and white. And like my mentor, who I've been working with for a year and a half now, and she's not the first person to call me out on this, like black and white thinking has been a real struggle for me for a long, long time. And I have not released it completely, but just realizing that like it actually feels way better to be in the middle and to not have my fixed ideas about things. Like what you're saying, you're so ready to be done with your mind. Like I have been in that place for so long. I'm so ready I'm so over this. Like get out of here already. You know, like I want my brain to just kick it and go. And I want to just be able to be my heart self. And I realize like it doesn't work like that. And we're all, you know, it's all one. But where that mind need to label things to understand things and create walls and stuff, like, you know, like there's this place here that has been super masky, and you know, people have taken real beef with this place because of how they've dealt with everything. And when I moved here, I was like, I'm just not going to go. It feels uncomfortable. I don't want to go there, and I'm not going to wear a mask and the whole thing. And it's really been like a hot topic among people about this particular location. And like, I don't know, like some part of me still has associative beef with this place, like just because all of my friends do, and you know, just because of how it was. But there's also this part of me that's like, whatever, we can go in on Thursday without masks. Maybe we should just like get over it already and move on, you know? Because we're only going to, like, the future is only going to be created anew if we let go of the past. Otherwise, you're just going to keep experiencing it. So it's like, okay, whatever. Like, maybe they made a choice that wasn't the best choice. But if I hold that against them for the rest of their existence and the rest of my life, then where are we? We're just right here and we're never going anywhere. And it's the same thing with me. Like, how can I move forward if I don't let go of my past? And how can I, like, well, I don't know. So I had a relationship with somebody a while ago, and something happened, and I really struggled to get past it. And his comment to me was like, okay, it happened. We're like 2 months in, you know, and I didn't know. Now I know. Could we use this as like, okay, now we can start from here, and now I know, and we can go forward and like let go of that. And I just really struggled mega with that. I'm saying mega a lot.
Mega.
Mega. And that's come back to me in the last month of realizing like what that request is. And ultimately that request is like the crux of unconditional love, of a peaceful, loving life, of a
Presence.
presence, of a harmonious existence. It's like, can you let the past be what it is and allow me to be who I am in this moment right now and create myself anew every moment going forward? Or are you going to hold me to who I was and never let me grow into who I could be? You know?
Yeah.
And I
That's
mean,
the
yeah.
well, that's what I was gonna say. That's the exact reason I cannot live in small towns. Like, I mean,
Oh,
I obviously I do live in a small town, but like I'm not associated. But the town I grew up in, it was the same way. Like I couldn't wait to get out of there because I was you know, like when I was in my mid 20s and I would come across somebody that I went to high school with. And in my situation, it was like we went to school together our entire lives, like the same 100 kids my whole entire life. And so, you know, they knew like everything about me that happened publicly and privately because it was a small town. But, and I would see people when I was like 25, 26, and they would still call me by this nickname, Oberdrunk, because my last name was Obermiller. And I went to school like drunk when I, like my senior year, like all the time. We would just like get drunk before school and go to school or whatever because it was miserable. And it's like, that's not who I am at all. But you could never live that down in like a small town. Like you're the same person.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you can change is to detach yourself completely
Yeah.
from that.
Well, and that's the torch in the darkness again, because I mean that's really actually the kind of situation I was thinking about, because that's what I lived. Like I lived in a situation for so long. I kept just living out my past, feeling like I had to live in this place and live this kind of life, and feeling like I'm the only one holding the torch here um when the reality is that like maybe the circumstance isn't supportive of your light and you just need to switch lanes, get out of the small town. And I know, people can look at that kind of thing. It's like, oh, you're running away. And I think I did for a really long time. I felt like I was running away and like I had to just be in this darkness and work through it and be like somehow make peace with like living the kind of life that I really didn't want to be living. Because that's what I was supposed to be doing for some reason. When the reality is like, if you know that you have this self inside of you and it's not being reflected back to you, but you're determined to find that self and to let that self be its fullest expression, then relocating or creating a new environment for yourself in whatever way that um, is like makes the most sense, because then you can see yourself reflected back to yourself and then you can continue to grow into it without the
Yeah.
resistance and the struggle.
Well, and there's like this whole thing of that you can't run away is complete bullshit. I've heard that a ton in my life. And it's like, absolutely, I can run away. I can run the complete opposite way from you if you are the problem, like, but the thing is like, we know this, you cannot run away from yourself, right?
Yeah.
Wherever you go, there you are. So you're not really running away from the real issues that you need to deal with because they go with you everywhere. But we don't need to deal with other people's issues. I don't need to deal with other people's judgments. You don't need to deal with other people's crap. Like I got me to deal with, and that's plenty to deal with. Like I'm going to run. And I get into this with my mom all the time because she's just like, oh yeah, run away. I'm like, yes. Yes, I used to feel guilty about that, but I will run as fast and far away from you as I can because it's unhealthy and I'm not willing to put myself in an unhealthy situation, and I can deal with myself on my own, So I don't think there's anything wrong with running fast away. And on that note, we are been on here for about an hour and a half or so.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and the Anchor does not like to let me upload something more than an hour and a half long.
Okay.
So I think we should end it. And we've come full circle. We've talked a lot about the torch in the darkness, which I think is the theme of this show. And for anyone listening, if you would like to connect with us, there is a link in our description of how you can leave us a message. And we would love to hear your voice and hear what you have to add to this conversation between women. So until next time.